start with our top story coming out of New Delhi, where 3 more people have been killed and dozens injured after violent clashes resumed in protests against the citizenship law. The death toll has risen to 7 in 2 days, with over 160 injured. Several shops and houses were set ablaze during riots as U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in the capital on a state visit. Fresh incidents of stone pelting from Maujpur, Brahmanpuri were reported in New Delhi on the second day of clashes. Police said the situation in the capital remains very tense, as the department is continuously receiving calls of violence. Meanwhile, Mumbai has been put on high alert after clashes in New Delhi. 34 people have been killed since protests against the disputed citizenship law began in December. In a related development, a minister of India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party has strongly batted for a law to shoot at sight those who raise pro-Pakistan slogans. The statement comes after an Indian girl chanted "Long live Pakistan" at an anti-citizenship law rally in Bengaluru. In an interview, the Agriculture Minister in Karnataka, B.C. Patel, said there is a need for a law for those who speak ill of India. The minister said he is appealing to Prime Minister Narendra Modi to bring in such a law, and he will also write to Modi on the issue. The minister said these people enjoy food, water, and the air of India, so why should there be here if they raise pro-Pakistan slogans? Well, Pakistan has raised the issue of violations of human rights in Indian-occupied Kashmir with the European Union Special Representative on Human Rights. The Federal Minister for Human Rights, Dr. Shireen Mazari, met Eamon Gilmore on the sidelines of the 43rd session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. The step was taken as the occupied valley is under India's clampdown for 205 days. She also highlighted the abuse of human rights of Muslims in India and discussed a wave of Islamophobia in the European Union. She also met the Brazilian Minister of Women, Family and Human Rights, Damares Regina Alves, and discussed child abuse. In other news, Libya's warring sides have suspended their participation in the UN peace talks scheduled for this week in Geneva. The Libyan National Army said the UN has not approved its 13 proposed delegates. Tripoli's government of national accord said it will also not take part in the dialogue until there is progress on military negotiations. This comes after the UN said Libya's warring sides proposed a draft ceasefire deal that will see displaced civilians return home. In a statement, the UN support mission in Libya said it will facilitate the ceasefire process. After the LNA and GNA suspended the Geneva talks, prospects for a lasting truce still remain unclear. Libya has been mired in turmoil since the toppling of strongman Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Well, the UN Security Council has called on all parties to maintain their support for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In a statement, the UNSC said council members support a two-state solution where Israel and Palestine can live in peace. It also criticized Israel's recent threat to build thousands of more homes in East Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Israel continues launching airstrikes on Gaza for the second consecutive day. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will continue bombing Gaza. In China's outbreak of the new coronavirus, 71 people have died in the last 24 hours. It puts the death toll at 2,663. The National Health Commission says it has another 508 infections, bringing that number to over 77,000. More in this report.
With COVID-19 numbers growing worldwide, authorities are stepping up their campaign to contain the outbreak. In South Korea, another 60 cases have been confirmed, taking their total to 893. The country now has the largest national total anywhere outside China, with 8 people dying from the illness. The outbreak has led the US and South Korea to scale back a military exercise planned for the spring.
General Abrams and General Park are looking at scaling back the command post training due to concerns about the coronavirus.
Italy has called for public calm while reporting a slower increase in the number of infections after a spike at the weekend. 11 towns, 10 in Lombardy and 1 in the neighbouring Veneto area, have been locked down, with over 50,000 residents stopped from leaving. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said residents could be quarantined for weeks.
The management at the level of the hospital structure has not really been faithful to the protocols that were recommended in these cases, and that has certainly contributed to the spread. But to this day, we continue to observe the utmost caution and rigor, and we promise you maximum concentration night and day.
In Vietnam, the health ministry says all 16 people infected with coronavirus have now recovered.
The World Health Organization chief has warned the coronavirus outbreak could reach pandemic levels. Speaking in Geneva, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the sudden increase in cases in Iran, Italy and South Korea is deeply concerning. But he said the disease can be contained since the number of cases in China has been declining steadily. Ghebreyesus also credited China for taking measures to stop the virus from spreading. The WHO has already declared the virus a global health emergency, but stopped short of calling it a global pandemic. On to Malaysia now, where the King has called for a meeting of all members of Parliament to decide the next Prime Minister. This comes after the King reappointed Mahathir Mohamad as the country's interim Prime Minister after his surprise resignation. Mahathir's resignation came amid rumors that his party was planning to form a new government excluding Ibrahim Anwar. Ibrahim had accused his party of plotting to form a new government with the United Malays National Organization. Now, the tussle between old rivals Mahathir and Ibrahim has shaped Malaysian politics for decades. The tension has persisted despite their alliance's win in the country's 2018 elections. In Slovakia, far-right leader Marian Kotleba, who is on trial on hate speech charges, could be the kingmaker in next week's parliamentary elections. His LSNS party is competing on a Slovakia first pitch, saying the government should put Slovak citizens before Brussels. This report has more.
The LSNS has muted some of its more controversial rhetoric as the elections draw closer. But in the past, party leaders have expressed respect for Joseph Tiso, Slovakia's Nazi Germany allied World War II era leader. Critics of the party say it has nothing to offer but hate and the victimization of marginalized communities.
They don't have any solutions. They attack certain groups, minorities. They make their stand against the weakest instead of offering an alternative. They don't have any program.
In 2016, the LSNS took 5th place with 8% of the votes in the parliamentary elections. But polls show its approval rating currently stands at 13%. In 2016, its tally was 3 times as much as the polls had forecast. This puts the party in a position to determine who leads the country by the end of the month. The ruling Smer party is struggling to clear the 5% threshold needed to get seats in parliament. As such, it may turn to the LSNS to form an alliance.
The rise of the LSNS party is not really their own success. It is rather the other party's inability to attract those who are leaning towards voting for LSNS.
LSNS leader Marian Kotleba faces 4 to 8 years in prison if he's convicted of backing calls to suppress individual freedoms on racial and religious grounds. 2 other members of his party are also on trial, facing charges of propagating hate speech against Jews, Muslims, and Roma Gypsies. The next hearing in Kotleba's trial has been postponed to 4th March, just after the elections.
Well, the British government has banned 2 domestic right-wing terror groups, making their membership punishable by 10 years in prison. The decision is a response to the rise of neo-Nazi extremism in the UK. In a statement, the government said it will ban the Sonnenkrieg Division and the System Resistance Network. The UK Home Secretary Priti Patel said recent attacks in Britain and Germany have highlighted the threat of violent extremism. She said banning the groups will make it harder for them to spread their hateful rhetoric. Meanwhile, the UK's domestic intelligence agency, the MI5, has assumed responsibility for rooting out far-right terrorism from the police. The agency says it is working with counter-terror officers to identify and prevent internet radicalization. The Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has called on people to help the country live in peace ahead of another round of protests expected next month. He said stability is needed to allow an effective public vote on a new constitution in April. Piñera said it is crucial to push through reforms to pensions, salaries, and health services. On Sunday, police and hooded protesters clashed during an annual musical festival in Viña del Mar. Cars were burned and the windows of a well-known hotel were smashed. The president said time has come for a great national agreement against violence.
Chile has already too much violence, and the time has come for a great national agreement against violence and in defense of democracy and peace.
The torrential rains in La Paz have caused houses on the slope of a hill in the Bolivian city to collapse. The Ministry of Defense says the death toll has risen to 19, with 2,700 people left homeless in flooding across the country. Local media reported 16 houses collapsed and another 12 were damaged in the Quela neighborhood of La Paz. Residents who were evacuated could not return home to salvage their belongings. Mayor Luis Ravilla said government officials have joined efforts to rescue belongings before at-risk homes are demolished. With La Paz perched at about 3,600 meters above the sea level, collapsed housing during heavy rains is common. The Prime Minister of East Timor has submitted his resignation to the president after the ruling coalition collapsed. Tor Matan Ruak says he is prepared to stay in office until the resignation is accepted. Ruak has served as Prime Minister since June 2018 after the collapse of two previous governments. The Southeast Asian nation gained independence from Indonesia in 1999 following a UN-supervised referendum. The country became fully independent in 2002 after 3 years of UN administration. I'll be back with plenty more news after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan's Senate has unanimously passed an anti-child abuse bill. The Zainab Alert Response and Recovery Bill 2020 is named after a child rape victim. Tabled by the Minister for Human Rights, Dr. Shireen Mazari, it is an administrative bill for the rescue and recovery of missing children. After being passed, the bill will be implemented across the country and special courts will decide missing children's cases within 3 months. The bill suggests the establishment of an authority to deal with the cases of kidnapping and rape of children. It said police will be bound to register FIRs immediately after receiving the complaint, failing which they will face imprisonment of up to 2 years. Last month, the country's National Assembly passed the bill incorporating the death penalty for the convicts. Former movie producer Harvey Weinstein has been found guilty of 2 counts in a sexual assault trial. He's been convicted on lesser charges of third-degree rape and a criminal sexual act in the first degree. He was acquitted, though, of predatory sexual assault and first-degree rape. He still faces charges in Los Angeles of rape and sexual assault of 2 women in 2013. Weinstein had pleaded not guilty to sexually assaulting former production assistant Mimi Haley and raping former aspiring actress Jessica Mann. The jury of 7 men and 5 women reached their verdict yesterday. After the hearing, Weinstein was taken to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, which has a unit that provides medical care for jail inmates. In the upper sea of Cortez, just off the coast of Mexico, activists have rescued a humpback whale caught in illegal fishing nets. This report has the details.
The Sea of Cortez on the west coast of Mexico was once called the world's aquarium. The vaqueta is a species of porpoise ubiquitous to the northern part of the Gulf of California. But the vaqueta is now on the brink of extinction. Members of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Organization had been patrolling the area, which is a vaqueta refuge, when they came across a humpback whale.
Yesterday, as we were guarding the critical zone, the Vaqueta Refuge, we found a humpback whale badly trapped in an illegal Totoaba net.
The whale was in trouble, caught in a net.
We took part in a disentanglement of a humpback whale in the critical zone in the Vaqueta Refuge, and it's a sad reminder of why it's so important for us to protect the refuge against illegal fishing.
Humpback whale numbers had fallen dramatically until the 1985 ban on commercial whaling. Since then, the numbers in many population groups have improved. Today, the biggest threat to humpback whales are collisions with ships and being caught up in fishing nets.
Let's get to some business news now. EU ministers are set to vote today to approve their mandate for post-Brexit trade talks with the UK. The document approved by the EU General Affairs Council will be the basis for future negotiations to be carried out by Michel Barnier. The document notes that a trade deal should be based on EU rules in some areas as a reference point. Meanwhile, UK ministers will also meet today at number 10 to discuss the government's opening stance for negotiations. The final agreement is due to be published online and presented in Parliament on Thursday. The UK Prime Minister's spokesman said London's primary objective in the talks is to ensure restoration of economic and political independence. Well, Asian stock markets are trading mixed as fears mount over the new coronavirus spread. Major stocks are shedding value as investors are panic selling. The Nikkei 225 is trading over 3% lower after shares of the index heavyweight fast retailing dropped over 4%. Shanghai Composite has lost over 1% over fears that China's first quarter GDP is expected to deteriorate amid the coronavirus outbreak. Seoul's Kospi has gained over 1% following yesterday's sharp losses. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is trading flat. Meanwhile, international Brent crude oil price is trading nearly 0.5% higher following yesterday's slump on demand concerns. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. You're all caught up. For the latest updates on these and other news stories, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching.